What's up, SBT? We're back for another Power Rankings video in Week 2. You're joined by Mams and Tyler.
What's up, guys?
Alright guys, so we're here again for another Power Rankings, and we're going to do exactly what we did before. We're starting with D-League Power Rankings and work our way all the way up to A. We hope you enjoyed the last video, and if you want to see any changes to how we're doing things, just let us know again in the comments, or just message us in the Discord server, which I'll link in the description. But let's just jump right into it. As you guys can see on the left side, again, like we did for the previous video, we have the entire list of Week 1 Power Rankings, and we're going to show on the right side how they differ for Week 2. Some very nice matches this week, and let's start with the bottom coach for D-League. Tyler, do you want to jump right into it?
Sure. So at the number 16 spot is going to be Wolf in the Brampton Ursaring for the second week in a row. Unfortunately, Wolf couldn't pull out a win this week either, so let's hope he can move up from that spot in the coming weeks.
Yeah, Wolf unfortunately played against Paco, who in the Week 1 Power Rankings was number 15th, and if you can't beat the 15th coach and you're already at the 16th, we can't really move you at all, so he remains at the 16th there. But moving up to number 15, we have Python and his Tennessee Toxicities, moving down quite a ways due to his loss this week against Tyler B, and it didn't really move in his favor, that match. Tyler B really brought every single counter he could, and I believe Python could not break the Tangrowth at all, and it just led to his downfall, really. But he's going to be sitting there at number 15.
Next up at number 14, we have Paco and the Charleston Gastrodons, who we just said, beat Wolf, who was at number 16, so even though he won, we couldn't really move him up much more than one slot.
Yeah, he won a 3-0, and the match itself was pretty interesting, but it didn't start off too great for him. I believe Wolf landed a Focus Blast on his Tyranitar and just O-code it. So, but yeah, he does get to move up, like we said. And, he won his match, but unless he gets to beat up some higher caliber coaches, we can't move him up too much. But at number 13, we have Daniel and his My Horse. He gets to move down 2 spots this week due to his loss, and I believe that was against Harbor. And Harbor actually reverse swept him with a Gyarados, Mega Gyarados, sorry. And Daniel, even though he was in the driver's seat the entire time, once that Gyarados hit the field, due to some unfortunate flinches and whatnot, it's just that Daniel just didn't have any more responses. So he just he still ends up losing that match, and he just moves down a couple spots.
Next up at number 12, we've got Harbor and the Snowpoint Snowruns, who, like we just said, beat Daniel with a Mega Gyarados reverse sweep, which is always fun to see because Mega Gyarados is one of those mons who got huge buffs coming into Gen 8 and is just insanely strong now, so as soon as you get it on the field, it does some massive damage and it's hard to counter. Yeah,
exactly. You get him into the right position and it's just kind of hard to stop after a Dragon Dance. Especially with Power Whip now a thing. But he did a good job coming back. He was pretty much down to just his last Pokemon, and out of nowhere, Gyarados just 6-0'd Daniel on the spot. So at number 11, moving up, we have Bolus and his Boston Blissies, moving down 1 spot this week, just because he lost to George, who, of course, last week was our number 1 coach in the Power Rankings. So losing to the number 1 coach, it's very tough, and I do believe that there was unfortunate hacks in that match. I think he missed a Sludge Wave because he defogged the Superior, and the Superior got an evasion boost. It went kind of wonky in that match, but even still, Bolus, he could not respond to Superior and the rest of George's threats at that point. So he does end up moving down just the one spot, but I'm sure he'll come back.
Next up at number 10, we got Cy and the Texas Toxtricities. Cy this week lost to Rozzy, unfortunately, and he had to go down one spot due to that loss.
Yeah, Cy, it was a decent match. Cy was trying to play around Rozzy's core, of course, but once Rozzy brought in that Mega Gallade, another Pokemon that really, like, if you let it get any momentum, it will just do some damage to you. So Cy, he does move down one spot because Rozzy was already rated pretty high in the first place, and he did try really hard in that match. He brought it down to a 3-0. But at number 9, we're moving up. We got Nico and his Spartan Samrots. Hard to kind of see Nico this low at this point. He's moved down quite a bit, 5 spots, because of his match against Ganon. And Ganon did really well. Ganon forced Nico to have to play his game, and he just wasn't keeping up with Ganon at that point. Ganon, we kind of underestimated him, ranking him pretty low in the week 1 at number 13. But with his performance against Nico, Nico really just did have to drop those places.
Next up at number 8, we've got Steph, who lost to Cammy this week, and the Ontario Lucarios just had to drop a spot because of that. After a great week 1, he couldn't pull off a second win in a row.
Yeah, it was a very close match, honestly. One of the better matches. I believe we did this last week too, Tyler, where we said like the matches of the week. I believe the Steph versus Cammy match was probably one of the best matches of the week in D League. If you guys want to take a look at that, yeah, it was a pretty decent match, and unfortunately, Steph, he did just drop the one spot, but. Yeah, we'll move up to number 7. We got Zach and his Chicago Corbinites moving down quite a bit as well after losing his match against John. Now, John, of course, is a force this season. Zach was, graciously able to upload his side, and I was able to watch that, and it looked like a pretty decent match on his side there. But Zach, unfortunately, he did not predict the Mew to have a Colbur Berry, and he was really reliant on endgame Halucha. And if your strategy does rely on that endgame, you kind of have to make sure you have backups to support all of the things that your opponent can bring. Like a Colbur Berry, yes, like in prep, when you have a Hydreigon. You might want to take into consideration that maybe the Mew could have a Colbur, because Hydreigon is a very big threat. So unfortunately, Zach, he did have to move down a few spots just because of that match there.
Next up, we got Tyler being the Villanova Torcats at number 6. Like we said earlier, Tyler pulled out a great win against Python, as he just could not find a way to break that tan growth. And Tyler played his walls really well, so he deserved that win.
Yeah, it moves up 2 spots, and we're finally getting to see Tyler move back up to where he was initially. In the initial PRs, he was sitting at number 2, so hopefully Tyler can climb back up. But at number 5, we got Ganon and his Cranborn Crobats, who jumps up 8 spots due to his win against Nico. And I think it's well deserved. Ganon was able to pull a very strong 5-0 against Nico, and never once let the control dip into Nico's favor. So Ganon deserves that spot, and let's see if he can hold on to it for the rest of the season.
Next up at number 4, we got John and his Dubai Drapions. John was one of the coaches who won this week against Zach. And like we said earlier, the Halucha almost reverse swept him, but John had the clutch Colbur Berry on his Mew to stop the bleeding and turn it back around to clutch that W.
Yeah, John definitely deserves that spot, especially with Zach rated at number 2 last week. And what's funny was that his Mew, even though it had a Culver, he also got crit, and he still lived the hit. So Mew just very bulky, but and he also brought a very interesting Mew set, if I believe. I think he brought Iron Defense Body Press Mew, which is very interesting. Something that I hadn't really seen before, but it's nice prep on his part for sure. Next up at number 3, we have Cammy and his Loch Ness Lombrace, who moves up 2 spots this week due to his win against Steph, and of course Steph rated number 7. But he the match went on for a little bit, with some Clef versus Melodic back and forth, and it kind of just stalled for a little bit there, but Cammy was eventually able to gain the momentum he needed to kind of just clean up late game. So he did well, and he'll remain pretty high up in the power rankings for the rest of the season, I believe. But we'll have to see.
Next up at number 2, we got Rozzy and 2 Spoons, 1 Zam. Rozzy was able to pull out a win against Sai this week, which was one of the good battles in my opinion. It was fun to watch, and Rozzy played his core really well, which gave Sai a lot of trouble. So he moved up 1 spot this week after earning that win.
I agree. I think Rozzy is going to sit at top for most of the season, if not the entire way. And I predict that at the beginning. Like I really think that Rozzy is definitely going to make playoffs this season. We see the top 3 here. I'll show you the obvious number 1 soon, but Cammy, Rozzy, and George being our number 1. Very strong coaches at that, and we might see them stick at the top for a while. But now that I mentioned our number 1, George in his Typhlosions, he's been at number 1 for the past 2 weeks. We ranked him at number 1 at post draft. He was number 1 last week, and he's still sitting there. So if anyone wants to try to take him down, by all means. But he 5-0'd Bolus this week, and a very convincing 5-0. Even though there was a bit of hacks in his favor, I still think he had the match pretty locked up. So George, congrats, and that's going to wrap up D-League for us. And yeah, I think we can move up to C-League now, Tyler, if you want to get into our number 16.
At number 16 in C-League this week, we got Ballistic and the Oregon Golducks. So this week, Ballistic played against Salapgo, and he couldn't pull out the win, unfortunately, so he went from number 14 down to number 16.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ballistic did have to drop a few ways there, and it was kind of hard to see him drop all the way to the bottom, but the coaches, as you can see from the side there, Griffin and Aaron, they had to move up, so Ballistic really couldn't move anywhere else but down. And although it was a decent match against Salapgo, he still got the short end of that, and I think you might see this often with Ballistic, is that his team doesn't have a lot of responses for certain threats, and he loses a lot of momentum. But I know he's still a good coach, and if he preps like a beast, he might still be able to recover. But let's move up to our number 15, and we have Goomba, the Detroit Dittos. Now he moved down quite a bit as well this week. Because he had to face off against Sacred. Sacred is a new replacement, which I need to mention as well, guys, is that we had to replace one of our coaches in C this week, and Sacred was very gracious to join us. But we're talking about Goomba here, and he had to face off against Sacred, and it came down. It was a pretty hefty match. I think Goomba really prepped for it, but Sacred was still able to really come back and take the win. So and he couldn't really move anywhere but down, considering everyone else had to move up on our week 1 power rankings.
Next up at number 14, we got Swampy and the Seattle Swampers. Swampy played against Griffin this week, and Griffin had a pretty convincing a pretty convincing win in my opinion. And the Sand team was just too much for Swampy to bring it back. The Sand team absolutely blew Swampy back in my opinion. So he had to go down like quite a lot by 10 spots all the way down to number 14.
We had to drop Swampy a lot, unfortunately, and the thing is not that Swampy prepped bad that match. He actually did, like, some of his items. He was actually really prepped for Sand. The thing is that his matchup against Sand was still heavily against him, even with his prep, and him losing to Griffin, who was ranked pretty low in our week 1 power rankings. I could not justify doing anything else but bringing him down pretty close to the bottom there. So sorry, Swampy. I know he has a good team, and I know he's a good coach, so I know he'll come back from this loss for sure. But at number 13, we have Salabko, who, even though he won, he did actually have to move down one, and that's just due to the fact that he beat Ballistic, who is already at number 16, and the match wasn't really that convincing. Like he did end up with the win, the 3-0, but it still could have gone either way. And it's not only that; it was the fact that the coaches above him, they were really convincing in their showings. And everyone in C, they're not mediocre by any standards, but I could not move Salabgo anywhere just due to the fact that Ryan and Piran could not play their week 2 matches this week. So you'll see them above Salabgo, guys, is that Piran at number 12 and Ryan at number 11. They did drop a few places, but that's due to the fact that they could not play their match, and coaches above them just performed very, very well. So, Tyler, if you want to move up to our number 10.
Yeah, skipping to number 10, we got Griff and his Ram City Ride-Ons, who, like I said earlier, had a full-on Sand team. Like, when I say full-on, there was one Mon out of the 6 who wasn't benefiting from the Sand, and it went down, like, in the first 6 turns, I believe, so it was full-on Sand all the way to the end. Mm-hmm. And, that's how we know Griff, though. Full offense, and it's always been like that. It's always gonna be like that, in my opinion, and that's what we like to see. But Griffin's offense was just too much for his opponent this week, as he moves up 5 spots with that convincing win.
Yeah, I agree. Griffin, not only did he pretty much pressure Swampy into a corner, he also actually made some predictions, which I'm very impressed with for Griffin. He was able to predict a lot of Swampy's plays and got him into a good position with a lot of his sweepers, and it just ended up with him with the win. It was very convincing, and I'm very happy to see Griffin move up a few spots there. But at number 9, we have Major and his All-Asian Alamomolas, who did lose this week, unfortunately, and he dropped a couple places. And we're still kind of waiting for Major to turn it around. His name being Major Comeback. But unfortunately, he still hasn't had. I think what it is that he's playing really powerful coaches. Like in his week 1 match, he played against Nathan, who of course. Nathan being our D-League finalist last season. And then this week, he actually had to face Rin, who was also rated pretty high in week 1 week 1 power rankings. So, of course, with him losing against some top tier players, he did have to move down. But, I know that he'll get a win with this team. The team is in itself very, very good. So, we'll just have to,
definitely
keep an eye out. But, yeah.
Next up at number 8, we got Sacred TD and the Los Angeles Dodrio. And Sacred is our new coach. Like Mam said earlier, he replaced Hunta, who unfortunately had to go for the time being. But we are glad to have him on board. And what better way to start off your career in the SBT with a win, a pretty convincing win to move up 5 spots in the power ranking.
I agree. It was pretty convincing. A team that he didn't actually draft himself, and he still was able to pull out the win, which is very, very nice. Moving him up from Hunter's 13th spot to now his 8th spot. And I'm curious to see how Sacred will do in these next following weeks. I hope he's a great ad, and again, we're sad to see Hunter go, but in place with Sacred, maybe we'll see some good matches. So next up at number 7, we have Nathan and his Charlotte Chimchars, and Nathan unfortunately lost this week to I believe it was Wee Valley, and facing against one of the top coaches, I'm going to go ahead and say that Wee Valley is probably one of the better coaches in C this time around. I'm actually very convinced, watching his matches. But losing to potentially the number 1 seed in C League, he doesn't drop down too many places. And Nathan, he was playing it properly, but Wibali he just kind of played very straightforward, and Nathan still could not respond properly to Wibali's threats. So Nathan did have to move down 1 spot because of that.
It's pretty much the Mega Gallade, if I'm being honest.
It is the Gallade,
so strong, and Nathan didn't prep enough for the Mega Gallade, and he got blown back.
We did say in the D division, but Mega Gallade, if you let it get any momentum, it's too strong of a force to be reckoned with. So whoever gets it really gets some automatic kills in most matches.
So next up at number 6, we got QQ and the Karakovs, and this week QQ played against Aaron, and Aaron, who we're gonna see up at number 5 next, had his first win after not being able to play week 1 due to unfortunate circumstances, and QQ had to move down 1 spot due to losing to a coach who was ranked low, not because of a bad week 1, but because of unfortunate circumstances. And we know Aaron's a good coach, so QQ didn't go down that much, and he only dropped 1 spot this week.
Yeah. If I were to say anything, I remember that match, and it came down to a 1-0, but I believe Quality Content could have actually won that match had he hit his Magma Storm against Aaron's Cell Stila. So hacks did come into play there, but I think Aaron was still able to pull it off. Aaron, by the way, again, if I have to introduce him, at number 5, Aaron as the Los Santos Septiles, he went up 11 spots from our number 16. And of course, like Tyler said already, Aaron was down there originally because he could not play his week 1 match. So, his record does not boast for how good he is of a player. Definitely one of the strong coaches in C League. And, unfortunately, due to some unfortunate hacks, like we said, Quality just got the short end of the stick there. But Aaron moving up quite a ways, and we'll see how he does for the rest of the season.
Alright, so next up at number 4, we've got Gryon and the Peterborough Palpitoads. And Gryon was at number 10 last week, but we actually moved him up all the way up to number 4 because he kept up with Ghost, who was at number 1 last week in PRs, and they were pretty head-to-head in that matchup, if I have to say so myself. And Gry was only at number 10 because he couldn't play his match against Aaron, unfortunately. So we couldn't really rank him accordingly, appropriately after week 1.
Yeah, it was very.
I feel like keeping up against the first seed deserves to be ranked high enough to.
It was a very awkward ranking, because like Tyler said, we couldn't see any of his, he didn't perform in week 1, so we couldn't see exactly where he would rank. But the fact that he was able to basically 1v1 Ghost for most of the match, and of course Gry as well also has a very strong Rain team that that allowed Zapdos to really be powerful this match. Like he brought Life Orb, Thunder, Hurricane, Zapdos in the rain, and that's just like in and of itself is just a very strong bring. And of course, like Ghost, he brought the right responses, but Zapdos, like it's way too strong having Hurricane and Thunder. You're definitely going to get some paralysis. You're definitely going to get some confusions. So it was a really strong showing by Gry. So we just have him at number 4 for now. I understand that he lost, guys, and it doesn't really make sense to move him up, but just because of his performance, these are power rankings, they're not standings. So he's just going to sit at number 4 there. Sitting at number 3 is Rin and his Las Vegas Ludicolo, who did not move at all from week 1. Rin, he did win his match this week against Major, but Major brought it down to a 1-0, and it was a very good match. Like probably one of the better matches of C League and this week. But because of the fact that the coaches above him just performed really well this week as well, I couldn't move Rin up any more than number 3, and with him almost losing to Major this week, I kind of just had to leave him at number 3 there.
Next up at number 2, we got Ghost and his Brisbane Zero FC. And even though he won against Gryron, like we said earlier, Ghost had to move down 1 slot, unfortunately, because that match was really close, and we couldn't really, like, it was a very close match, obviously, but our number 1 spot, Wavaldi, had a more convincing win, in my opinion, last week, so he deserved to take that first spot away from Ghost.
Yeah, if I can jump in, you guys are going to see at number 1, we do have Wolf Valley and his Seattle Pre-Mariners, who had to move up from number 2 to number 1 this week, just because of the fact that the matchups, like he played his match really well. He got the 3-0 against Nathan of all people. Again, Nathan, one of our stronger coaches in C, and since Ghost was facing off against Gry, it kind of felt like the power difference there kind of tilted Wavalli in Wavalli's favor, because of the fact that he was still able to be a very strong coach and drop Nathan a little bit, and that's kind of why I bumped him up to number 1 over Ghost. I hope Ghost doesn't get too salty about that, but I think Ghost and Wavalli and perhaps even Rin are going to bounce back and forth with these number 1 and 2 and 3 slots. So very strong coaches at the top. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up C League for us, and we're actually going to jump into B League right now. Tyler, if you want to start us off.
So at number 16 in B League this week, we've got Rummy and the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, who went down 1 spot from last week after a loss against Juke. And although it was a great match, Juke being ranked at number 14 and Rummy losing to a low ranking, even though he was low, had to take the last spot.
Yeah, I agree. There's no way Rummy could move up at all, especially with the number 16, as you guys can see, was Raven, and he actually won his match this week. Juke, he did perform really well in that match with the sub Landorus, but Rummy just could not respond in certain cases. So he did play as well as he could, but again, we do have some really good coaches in B League, and if you're not above average in this league, unfortunately you're not going to pull out the win. But we're going to move up to our number 15, which is Witchard and Superior Snobs, moving down 2 spots. To be honest, did not expect Witchard to be sitting this low on the standings this early in the season, but we do have him sitting here after losing to Miles. Miles was already ranked pretty high up on the PRs, but Witchard already at number 13 in our week 1. He did have to drop a few spots there, and of course it's Witchard, so he did play a really good match, but I think what happens with Witchard is that he gets into his own head sometimes, and he thinks that losing a certain mon or a win con here or there automatically loses in the match. And I think if he just derives from that fact, he can actually stay in the match and not get tilted, because I understand tilt, like it can really mess up your thought process. But I think if Witchard, he just gets out of his own head, he'd be able to pull out those wins.
Yeah, for sure. Like, he, in my opinion, he just says GG way too early, and it's never too late to bring the game back. Like, obviously, it's a lot more work to bring back after something happens like this, but if you want to earn that win, you really have to work for it, and you have to pull it back out.
I agree. I mean, Witchard, in his defense, brought it down to a 3-0. So, you never know what could happen. You never know.
Exactly.
If hacks could be in your favor, even though you shouldn't wish for that. But it's still Pokemon, so hacks is always a thing. But yeah.
Next up at number 14, we've got our newcomer in Joely and the Kattegat Corviknights, and Joely took Dix's place last week, and after playing against Leonard, he couldn't pull out his first win in the league just yet, but I'm sure he can. I'm sure he's gonna defend the fact that he went down 4 spots, and he's gonna take it back next week and pull out his first win in the league.
I agree. I know that Joel is a really good competitor. We pulled him right out from the Coliseum, which we're happy to have him in here. But Joel didn't actually, he didn't draft the team that he was building to use against Leonard this time around. And I know Leonard had already really prepped for Dix's team before Dix ended up dropping. And again, guys, we're unfortunately we have to say goodbye to Dix for this season. Maybe he'll come back again next season, but we're happy to have Joel with us this time around. And I know that Joel changed up his team quite a bit, so I'm really interested to see how he plays with it the next couple weeks coming. But at number 13, we have Juke Loans and his Malibu Morlos, who ended up moving up 1 spot because he did beat Rummy. And that's basically the extent of it. I would like to move a Juke a lot higher, but just beating the coach at the bottom does not really help your case. I'd love to see Juke pull out some wins later in the season against higher ranked coaches, but for now, he does get to move up, and he's sitting at number 13.
Next up at number 12, we've got not Adam and the Arson Ambit Bombs, and Adam played against Aaron last week, and he couldn't pull out a win after pulling out a pretty convincing win against Raven in week 1, but he couldn't repeat it in week 2, as he got swept, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, what ended up happening, so Adam faced off against Aaron, yeah. I believe that there was... So, I'm going to say this now, Adam really played into Aaron's hand, and it was a very, very obvious Celesteela set that ended up sweeping him, because Adam revealed Flamethrower on his Goodra, and then later, Aaron brought in the Celesteela on the Goodra, knowing that there was a Flamethrower coming. That already should be a sign saying, hey, I'm weakness policy, hit me with your Flamethrower, I'm going to set up an Autotomize and basically start going ham. And that's exactly what happened. Adam played right into Aaron's hand, and when something like that happens, it's just very obvious, and when you don't have any responses to Celesteela after that, it doesn't really bode well for you. So he did have to drop a few spots there. I know Adam has a really good team, but with stuff like that, you have to make sure that you weigh your odds, see if it's worth. Because yes, hitting Celesteela with the Fire type move and bringing him down might be the play, but you also have to realize if it's worth activating that weakness policy or not. So yeah, that was Adam, and let's move up to number 11, and we have Crow and his Virginia Victinis. Crow still has not been able to nab that first win yet, and I'm still waiting to see what his really powerful team can do. But he did go up against PZZ this week, and PZZ really brought out the big guns. He 5-0'd Crow. Not something that you really want happening in your week 2, but he did have to drop a few ways there, and PZZ was really he was always a step ahead of him. I think the beginning of the match they were both trying to gain momentum, but in the end Crow just could not find his footing, and PZZ was able to get the better of him there.
Next up at number 10, we got Pierre and the Pittsburgh Pussycats, who I feel like number 10 fits our rain team better than number 6, and Pierre probably knows that. Offense. I still love Pierre though, but yeah, after not being able to break Raven's absolutely disgusting stall team, I must say, he had to move down quite a few spots because Raven was rated at number 16, so
yeah,
being stalled out by that had to lose him quite a few spots.
Indeed, and the fact that Pierre could not respond to Altaria after it set up a Dragon Dance, it really doesn't say well for how your team does against setup sweepers. So yes, of course, Pierre does have a really powerful rain team, but if you can't respond to setup sweepers, it might be a little bit hard down the road. So that's why Pierre, his matchups might be a little bit iffy sometimes, but I know he's a good coach, and I'd like to see him do a lot better if he wants to make some moves or what have you. But anyways, at number 9 we have Leonard and his Azel Alkmaar, who moved up 3 spots from beating Joel. And of course, Joel was just entering the league, so it's kind of hard to say whether this match was really done justice, but Leonard really did prep for this match, and I think he did really well. He brought the proper sets. He brought the Coldberry Necrozma, which was able to beat that Hoopa, and he was able to pull the win. So he moves up a couple spots.
Next up at number 8, we got Charles and the Pittsburgh Printlubs. And Charles this week played Ampha, and he had to move down 1 spot because he couldn't get over Ampha's defensive core.
Yeah. Ampha. So Charles, I understand that there could be hacks here and there that might not go in your favor. It's part of the game that you really have to in the back of your mind, again, you have to weigh the odds. Is it worth taking the risk to do this or whatever? Is the role worth? So just what I'm trying to say here is just don't let hacks kind of tilt you into a certain way, because I know that it could be aggravating at times, but there's still ways out of your situations. But again, with him facing against Ampha, who was rated the number 1, he did have to drop just that 1 spot, and I know he'll bounce back. He played a really powerful week 1. But now at number 8, we have Charles, and we're gonna move up to our number 7, who we have Raven and his Destin Lucarios, who moved up quite a lot because of his win against Pierre, like we already talked about. In the end game, he made sure that he chipped down what he needed, and he was able to get Altaria in a good spot to just Dragon Dance and just boost on. I think he was able to boost on one of Pierre's Mons that could not spam Earthquake, or no, he was able to boost on the Muck because he didn't Mega Evolve Altaria first, which was a very good play. Once he got 1 or 2 Dragon Dances up, it was basically a wrap. So Raven did really well against Pierre, and this is what I'm expecting from Raven. So let's see if he can keep it up.
At number 6, we've got Gene, who couldn't pull out a win against Risso this week, as the Ottawa Gengars had to almost hand the game out to Court Change Cinderace, and we've seen Cinderace at its full power last week. Even though it didn't do much, the court change pretty much win Rizzo the game, even though he literally missed. He clicked like 2 buttons. He clicked court change to win, and then he clicked Pyro Ball for the miss, and then Cinderace went down right away, so...
Yeah, Cinderace not being too, prominent, but the court change really did help him in this match. Like,
court change won the game because Dragonbolt was able to come in
and
revenge every single thing that was left on the court.
Briss was, we can basically say it. At number 5, we have Brisso and his Hell Creek Head Smash, who moved up 6 spots from his win against Gene. But with Riss preserving his Dragapult to the end of the match, he was really able to just click buttons and click sub and clean up the rest of the match. Now that all the hazards that Gene laid out on Riss were now on Gene's side because of the court change. A reverse sweep like that, definitely it was able to move Riss up a few spots. So Riss at number 5.
At number 4, we've got Miles and the Bakersfield Bearticks, who, even though he won, he had to go down 1 spot, unfortunately, because that win was against Witchard, who was ranked down at number 13 last week, and the other coaches that were ranked higher than Miles, unfortunately, had the more convincing wins against people who were ranked higher than Miles' opponent was, so Miles had to go down 1 spot this week.
Yeah, Miles, he did a really good job against Witchard. I will say, first I'll say that the coaches above him played phenomenally, and the coaches that they faced off against were ranked a lot higher. But Miles, what I've noticed is that he didn't preserve the differential that he probably should have done in the end game against Witchard. Because I think he could have actually got a 4-0 or a 5-0, but instead he actually settled for a 3-0 against Witchard. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing, because you want to preserve your win cons and get the win no matter what. But I don't think sacking certain mons is the way. I can't really fault him. He played a really good match against Witchard. Witchard tried really hard to break against Miles' core, and he did well with the toxicity at first. He predicted the obvious switch into the Runerigus, which Runerigus pretty much shuts down toxicity if it's not like Specs with Hex or Snarl or something. But Miles was able to break that down. Once he was able to break that down, Scarf Terrakion really did a number to Witchard's team. So, he did a really good job in that match. But at number 3 now we can move up. We have Aaron the Baron. And these top 3, they might swap around a little bit. But right now we have Aaron at number 3. And he moved up 2 spots just from his match this week against Adam. And like we said earlier, previously, he got that 5-0 with the Celesteela, mainly because Adam played right into Aaron's hands. He showed off the Celesteela. He pretty much made it really obvious that Celesteela was weakness policy. He set up the Autotomize, and from there it kind of just snowballed. And there was pretty much no way Aaron could lose after that turn of events. So a really good showing on Aaron's part for that match.
Yeah, most of these Pokemons are really hard to take down after they start setting up.
Yeah, exactly.
Next up at number 2, we got PZZ and the Seattle Sharpedos. And PZZ faced off against Crow this week. And Mega Medicham is just so strong and it claimed a few kills. But yeah, PZZ had to go up a few spots after that pretty convincing win, and he took the number 2 spot this week.
Yeah, PZZ stole that number 2 spot right up from Miles and Gene from last week, because of the fact that his win against Crow was just very, very dominant. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing in that match. I will say the baton pass on Medicham although it's really great to gain momentum, and I guess it kind of makes sense because you can predict like the slow bro coming in, um, I don't, or like you're predicting a Rocky helmet or something like that. I'm not sure how much it really helped him in this match because even though he did have baton pass on Medicham, teleport is still negative priority, so it's still able to gain Crow the momentum he needed. It's really good tech. If you don't want to get staticked or something, or like a Rocky helmet chip. But I really think with Medicham, you just kind of have to hit hard, or maybe go for a sub. I think sub would gain him so much momentum. But I can't fault him. He was able to pull out the win, a very convincing win at that as well. So he's just sitting at number 2. But we can move up into our obvious number 1. We have Ampha and his Minnesota Twin Needles, who just didn't move at all from week 1 and post draft, kind of just sitting at the top for the last 3 weeks, just sitting there. And I wonder if he's ever going to move down. He played a really good match again this week against Charles, and there could have been a few hacks here and there, but he still was able to nab the win. And he's just going to be sitting up there until he can lose a match. But
yeah, definitely. We'll see who in B League gets step up to the plate and try to steal that number 1 spot off Ampha.
I agree. So that's gonna wrap up B League for us, guys. We're gonna finally go into A now, and A League had a couple of moves this time around. But Tyler, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I sure can. So for the number 16 spot in A-League, we got Piranha Plant and the Washington Wallerines. And Piranha faced off against Toxic, who was ranked at number 5, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to bring it down to 1-0, and it was a very close match. It was definitely one of the fun matches to watch this week.
Yeah, I agree.
But, unfortunately, he still lost, and he was at number 15. And the number 16 spot actually won last week, so sadly Piranha had to go down to that last spot.
I agree. Yes, he was able to, Piranha, I think he was able to change it up for this week, and he saw a really strong opponent and prepped like hell for him. He brought it down to a 1-0. But, his previous week, he got 6-0'd by Zane. It doesn't really change too much there. Piranha was really close, and I would love to move him up because of the fact that I think Toxic underestimated him, but he still ended up losing that match, so he kind of just has to sit there for right now. But he did play that match really well. At number 15 we have Skyquake, and in his Lancaster Landorus. And I really hate seeing Sky this low, especially when we had him at number 1 in our initial power rankings. But he played off against Simi this week, and Simi played an incredible showing against Sky this week. There was no hacks. He was able to just pretty much dominate, and Sky just could not get around certain threats of Simi's. He kind of just let Simi have all the momentum, and I don't know if that equates to us having Sky that low, but I just could not move him up on the rankings at all, and I could not put him above other coaches that really did perform a lot better in the last 2 weeks. So Sky just has to sit there for now.
Definitely, but knowing Skyquake, he's going to turn it around, move back up in a jiffy.
Oh yeah, I agree for sure.
Up next at number 14, we got Aces and the Tennessee Volcanians, who after coming out with a huge upset win against Skyquake week 1, couldn't pull up the same verdict against Cheese week 2, as Cheese absolutely dominated that match in my opinion. Aces has had absolutely nothing for Cheese's hazard stack, and even though Cheese was hazard stacking most of the turns, he still found a way to get the momentum every single time, I feel like, and Aces never really had the upper hand that match.
Yeah, I agree. The only time Aces actually did have some momentum was with his Arctozolt. Like, of course, Arctozolt under Hail is going to do some work no matter what, but Cheese was still able to to come out of there with only I think Arctizel only got one kill out of there, and that was against G-Darm. And you can't really say much against G-Darm there, but he pretty much was just fodder for Arctizel in that match. Again, like you said, Tyler, Aces, he just could not find his footing this match. Cheese was always a step ahead of him, especially with the fact that the hazard stack was just ginormous. But he did end up making a lot of changes to his team, so perhaps we can see a win from Aces this next couple weeks. But at number 13, I'm gonna say this because we have Tyler and the Canadian Kid, and his Winnipeg Weaviles sitting at number 13. Tyler, you were dropped a couple spots there, unfortunately. With your loss against Eagle, and if I had to say, it was a really good match. I think there was also a hazard stack this match.
A lot of it. None of us had any removal whatsoever, so there was a bunch of hazards on both sides of the field.
Yeah, and again, it was a really good match, and with no removal, it kind of just became a very short match with no swaps or very little swaps. But it came down close. I think did you guys you brought it down to a 1-0, so not a bad match at that. Eagles already ranked pretty low, so unfortunately, Tyler, you kind of just have to sit there at number 13 for right now.
Next up at number 12, we've got the other half of that battle in the Eagle and the Ottawa Raptors, who, after winning against myself as the number 10 spot, had to go up a few spots all the way up to number 12.
Yeah, and like we said already, that match, it was pretty close, and I think it could have gone either way. I forget how the end game went, but because I know he brought Specs Manaphy, but I don't think
I had to hope to get a roll against the Cradley with Sneasel before coming in with Mega Pidgeot on the Toxtricity.
Right. Oh yeah, it was the Toxtricity that one, because you had the work up Pidgeot, which was amazing, and I think had you brought Hyper Beam, you probably would have won that match. But it's kind of tough to bring Hyper Beam. Does Pidgeot get like Hyper Voice or something? I don't think it's.
Not sure, but I had to bring Heatwave in the matchup for the Klefki.
Yeah. Would Heatwave have done more than Hurricane? I'm just trying to do the math in my head.
It would have been 20%, 12% more, but I had to go for the confusion since neither of them would have.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But again, it was a close match. It pretty much came down to last couple of percentiles on each mon. But yeah, at number 11, we're gonna move up to Stumbles and his Cleveland Cresselias, who lost against me this week, and he had to move down a few spots. I will say this for Stumbles, his team is incredibly ridiculous to prep for. Very, very powerful squad this season, and I just could not move him down. Like, Stumbles still one of the 0-2 coaches, but I just couldn't move him down at all because I know how good of a coach he is, and even though I beat him 4-0 this week, it still was a bit closer than what it seemed. And had I not had like Sucker Punch on Cinderace, I really would have lost to that Alakazam. So Stumble is definitely a good coach with a very strong team, and it was another match where court change kind of came into effect. Like, I was able to get rid of all the stacking that Stumbles was doing, but he in the end game, he just didn't really have any kind of response to Reneragus in Trick Room, so that was kind of his downfall. But yeah, he's sitting at number 11.
Yeah, Trick Room Reneragus was definitely fun to see.
Yeah.
Up next at number 10, we've got Simi and the Blue Collar Blossoms, who pulled off a pretty big win against Skyquake for himself, and it was winning against Skyquake is always a good feat to accomplish, because obviously Skyquake was the runner-up in A-League last season, and he's continuously been having good records in the SBT, so it always feels good to pull off a win against Skyquake, and Simi did just that last week. to move up 2 spots to number 10.
Yeah, I agree. Simi, I know that Simi actually did not want to be paired up against Skyquake this season because, if I remember correctly, Simi has not been able to beat Skyquake for the last couple seasons that he's been in SBT, and they started off in the same division, right? They started off both in C, and Simi was just not able to beat him at all. But this season, Simi was able to just come out with the win, and a very convincing win as well, so that's why he moves up a couple spots there. But at number 9, we have Zombie and his Victoria Victinis, who did end up losing to Star this week, and so he moves down about 5 spots. He was sitting really high up when he won against Stumbles last week, but Star coming out with the better of him. Once Zombie lost that Chansey, I believe, he really did not have any sort of way to outstall Star, and I loved the beginning of that match. If you guys want to watch that match in A division, we had a lot of good matches in A this week, but Zombie versus Star, the beginning of that match, Zombie was able to really pressure Star with Iron Defense Mega Steelix, I believe, and I love seeing that set. And what he basically did was he just bounced back and forth between Chansey and Steelix, and just kept wishing up Steelix back to full health, even though Steelix already had rest. But a very interesting set for sure. I love the creativity. But once Chansey went down, it was really hard for Zombie to keep up with Star's bulky mons, because Star's team already in itself is very bulky. With all him, with all the breaking that Zombie wanted to do, he just could not break the rest of Star's team. So he just sits at number 9.
Yeah. Next up at number 8, we got Star. We got Star in the Lucky Liberos, and he pulled off the win against Zombie, obviously. And even though he got really pressured by that Mega Steelix at the start of the match, he was able to hold on and outstall Zombie at the end of the match to pull off that convincing win.
Yep, and Star was sitting at number 13 last week. So with that win, he just had to move up like 5 spots there. So sitting pretty at number 8. I wonder if he can keep up the momentum. Hopefully not, because he plays me this week. But at number 7, we got Techno and his Texas Magnemites, who did lose his match this week against Beater. That's why he ends up moving down a couple spots. But his match against Beater really did well against Techno this week. I believe it was the first match of the week. And you wouldn't expect Techno, who was sitting at number 2, and Beater, who was sitting at number 16 from getting 6-0'd last week, to see Beater just 4-0 Techno, who was ranked really high in the initial power rankings. That's just a testament to how good Beater is. But I think Techno kind of underestimated the prep, and Beater was able to just get the better of him there.
Next up at number 6, we got Beater in the DC Darmanitan, who, after getting 6-0'd week 1, obviously, was able to pull off that pretty nice win against Techno to move up 10 spots all the way up to number 6.
Yeah, and like we just said, guys, his match against Techno is pretty convincing, and again, Beater himself is just a really strong coach. I think what we didn't address before is that Beater takes a little bit to start winning his matches in the early season. I think sometimes it takes a week or two, but it looks like he's already started his win streak, so congrats. Let's see some more. But moving up to number 5, we have Toxic and his Texas Tornadus, who ended up winning his match against Piranha this week, like we talked about earlier. He was sitting at number 5 week 1, sorry. So he just didn't end up moving, and I would love to move Toxic up because I know how good of a coach he is, but with him almost losing his match for Piranha, and not that he played it wrong, like I believe Toxic preserved all that he could. But I think Piranha really prepped well for Toxic this week, and I think Toxic kind of just underestimated the prep that Piranha was bringing, because early match, he pretty much sacked his Swords Dance Talon Flame for a lot of chip on the Snorlax, which I'm not sure if it was worth it, but he was kind of just playing very standard, and I think in the beginning he exploded with sorry, who was that Monty? He exploded with was it Steelix? He set up rocks and then just exploded with Steelix.
Yeah.
And that made him already kind of down him on, and that only chipped the Snorlax down to half. So Toxic really just trying to throw whatever he could at Piranha to get Mawile in and start spamming Mawile, which of course is once you bring Mawile in, you always want him in and just click buttons. But I think he was rushing the match a little bit. So, anyways, Toxic at number 5. I know he'll do well. He has 2 wins under his belt, so he's sitting at number 5, and I'm sure he's going to keep moving up.
Next up at number 4, we got Cheese in the Michigan Manectrix. And Cheese obviously dominated Aces this week, so just by that standard, he had to go up a few spots up to number 4.
Yeah, Cheese again never lost control of that match, and with his win against Aces, placing him above Toxic kind of made more sense to me. Just because of the fact that Toxic's opponent this week was ranked pretty low, and the match came down to a 1-0. But Cheese, very dominant win, and Aces was already ranked up pretty high, higher than Piranha, so you just had to move up above him. But now we're going to our top 3, and these top 6 guys are might be interchangeable sometimes, but a lot of coaches at the bottom as well might be rising to the top in the next couple of weeks. A-League just does that a lot. All the coaches are very, very strong. But for right now, at number 3, we have Zane, who dropped 2 spots this week due to his loss against Ominous Draco. Zane, I don't think Zane has dropped at all from the top 3 in the last 2 weeks. He was initially number 2, and then he sat at number 1 last week. This time he's sitting at number 3, and he went really long against Ominous. They brought it down to a 1-0. It was a very, very good match. And I know Zane's a good coach, and his loss this week, it'll mean something in the long run, but I think it's just a speed bump for Zane. He's definitely going to come back for the next following weeks.
Definitely. So next up at number 2, we've got Mams and his Durham Dragonaires. Wow. And Mams was able to... What a bad coach.
I mean, but, I don't know what to say. I kind of just... I really wanted to play against Stumbles. I've never played him before. So I figured I'd prep really well for him this time around.
Yeah, that battle was won in prep just by the fact that you had the court change really advantaged you in the late game, and that Cinderace to stop you from getting swept by that Alakazam.
Yeah, I mean, I could have brought Scarf Cinderace as well, but it just didn't really have the best matchup, and I think I think Stumbles prepped really well as well. The thing is that I think he was concentrating too hard on the fact that Kyurem pretty much would run his team if not for the Miltank. And it's pretty obvious that Miltank was going to be his counter for my Kyurem. It's just really good against me, especially in terrain. He has the Mystic Terrain, but the fact that Kyurem can also be a pressure stall set, I was kind of just able to sit behind subs in front of Miltank as it couldn't break the sub the first time around with Seismic Toss. but again, like it was, Stumbles prepped really well. He brought the scarfed Tapu Fini, which I figured had a really good matchup against me, and he was able to cripple the Melmetal turn 1. So he did a good job there, and he was able to get into a position where Alakazam could set up and potentially reverse sweep me. But thankfully, Cinderace threw a Sucker Punch, otherwise I would have kind of been in trouble there.
Yeah, for sure.
But our number 1 is going to be Ominous Draco and his Croatian Crawdons. Took 2 weeks to get Ominous all the way up to the top here. He moves up 5 spots. But with his win against Zane, who was sitting at our number 1, Ominous, he's a very, very good coach, and I already expressed the fact that I think he's probably one of the favorites to make playoffs this season. So him sitting at number 1 is no joke. He might be sitting there for a little bit, but I think he plays Toxic this week, so that's definitely going to be a good match. But yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up our power rankings. Right, Tyler? Do we have anything else we want to address here?
That's it for now.
All right, so yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed our week 2 power rankings. If you did, maybe leave a comment down below, or message us in the server. We're always happy for feedback. If you want to see anything changed, but yeah, these are power rankings, guys, and we'll see you next week for another set of power rankings.